The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate Middleton stirred scrambled eggs in the kitchen. The familiar sounds of her children getting ready for school filled the air. Prince George was rushing around looking for his missing school tie, while Princess Charlotte complained about her hair not sitting right. Little Prince Louis sat at the breakfast table, happily making a mess with his cereal. William walked into the kitchen wearing his navy suit, checking his phone for the day's schedule. He kissed Kate on the cheek and ruffled Louis's hair, causing the toddler to giggle. This was their normal routine, the peaceful chaos of family life that they both treasured despite their royal duties. "What time is your meeting with the Commonwealth representatives?" Kate asked, plating the eggs for the children. 11:30, William replied, pouring himself coffee. "Should be finished by 1. We can have lunch together if you want." Kate smiled. These quiet moments together were precious. Between their royal engagements, charity work and parenting duties, they rarely had time to just be husband and wife. She was looking forward to their lunch date. The children finished breakfast and headed upstairs to brush their teeth. Kate began cleaning the kitchen while William reviewed some documents at the breakfast table. The palace staff moved quietly around them, respecting the family's morning routine. At exactly 10:47 a.m., William's private phone rang. It was not his official royal phone, but the personal one reserved for family matters. Kate noticed him check the caller ID and furrow his brow slightly. It was his private secretary, James, calling on the family line rather than through official channels. "Good morning, James," William answered, expecting to hear about a schedule change or minor adjustment to his day. Instead, James's voice was shaky and urgent. "Your Royal Highness, I need you to sit down. We have received urgent news from Balmoral Castle." Kate looked up from loading the dishwasher. She could hear the tremor in James's voice from across the kitchen. William's expression changed immediately from casual to deeply concerned. "What's happened?" William asked, his voice becoming more formal. "Her Majesty has taken a very serious turn for the worse. The doctors are calling all family members to come immediately. Sir, this is not like the previous health scares. They are saying time is very limited." The words hit William like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of the breakfast table, his knuckles turning white. Kate abandoned the dishes and moved closer to her husband, reading the devastating news in his face before he even spoke. "How long do we have?" William asked quietly. "The doctors cannot say for certain, but they strongly advise that family members should arrive as soon as possible. The royal flight is being prepared now." William closed his eyes, trying to process the information. His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had been his constant throughout his entire life. Even when his mother Diana died, even through the most difficult periods of his youth, the Queen had been there. She was more than his grandmother. She was his mentor, his guide, and the steadiest presence he had ever known. "We'll be there within 3 hours, William said, his voice barely steady. "Of course, Your Royal Highness. I'll coordinate with the travel arrangements." William ended the call and sat in silence for a moment. Kate reached out and took his hand, feeling how cold it had become. She could see him struggling to find words. "William, what is it?" she asked gently. "It's Granny," he said, using the private family name for the Queen. "She's very ill. The doctors don't think she has much time left." Kate felt her heart sink. The Queen had been such an important figure in her life too. When Kate first joined the royal family, she had been terrified of making mistakes or disappointing this legendary woman. But the Queen had been nothing but kind and welcoming, offering guidance and support as Kate learned her new role. "Oh, William," Kate whispered, squeezing his hand tighter. The reality of the situation began to set in for both of them. This was not just a personal tragedy. It was a moment that would change everything. William would one day be king, but they had always assumed they would have more time to prepare. The Queen had seemed so strong, so eternal. William stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Kate could see his shoulders shaking slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. She knew he was thinking about all the conversations he still wanted to have with his grandmother, all the advice he still needed, all the moments they would never share. "The children," Kate said softly. "We need to tell them." William nodded, still staring out the window. "How do we explain this to them? George is only 9. Charlotte is 7. Louis won't even understand." Kate's heart broke for her children. They adored their great-grandmother, who always had time for their stories and games despite her busy schedule. The Queen had been present for every important moment in their young lives. "We'll tell them together," Kate said, moving to stand beside William. "We'll be honest but gentle. They need to understand what's happening." William turned to face his wife, and Kate saw tears in his eyes that he was fighting to hold back. She had seen William emotional before, but this was different. This was the weight of losing someone irreplaceable combined with the overwhelming responsibility of what would come next. "I'm not ready," William admitted quietly. "I'm not ready to lose her, and I'm not ready for what comes after." Kate wrapped her arms around her husband, holding him close. "You don't have to be ready. No one could be ready for this, but we'll face it together, just like we always do." They stood together in their kitchen, holding each other as the magnitude of the situation settled over them. Outside, life continued normally. People were going to work. Children were going to school. The world was spinning as it always did. But inside Kensington Palace, William and Kate's world was about to change forever. William pulled back slightly and looked into Kate's eyes. "Will you come with me to Balmoral?" "Of course," Kate replied without hesitation. "We're in this together, always," as they began the difficult process of preparing for the journey to Scotland. Neither of them could have imagined how this day would test not only their strength as individuals but their bond as a couple. The goodbye they never wanted was about to begin, and their private pain would soon become a shared burden that would either break them or make them stronger than they had ever been before. Kate and William climbed the grand staircase of Kensington Palace with heavy hearts. Each step felt harder than the last as they approached their children's playroom. The sound of laughter and animated chatter drifted down the hallway, a stark contrast to the devastating news they were about to share. Prince George was building an elaborate castle with his Lego blocks while Princess Charlotte was dressing her favorite doll in a tiny pink gown. Little Prince Louis was playing with toy cars on the carpet, making engine noises that echoed throughout the room. They looked so innocent, so blissfully unaware that their world was about to change. Kate paused at the doorway, watching her children play. Her maternal instincts wanted to protect them from this pain, to shield them from the harsh reality of loss and grief. But she knew they deserved to know the truth about their beloved great-grandmother. "Children," William called softly, his voice slightly hoarse, "can you come sit with Mummy and Papa for a moment?" George looked up from his Lego creation, immediately sensing something was different. At 9 years old, he had developed an awareness of adult emotions that sometimes surprised his parents. Charlotte also stopped playing, her bright eyes studying her father's serious expression. "Are we in trouble?" Charlotte asked, clutching her doll closer to her chest. "No, sweetheart," Kate said, settling onto the large sofa and patting the cushions beside her. "We just need to talk to you about something important." Louis toddled over first, climbing onto Kate's lap with his toy car still clutched in his small fist. George and Charlotte exchanged glances before joining their parents on the sofa. The family sat close together, creating a protective circle. William cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. How do you tell children that someone they love deeply is dying? How do you explain death to a 4-year-old who still believes in fairy tales and happy endings? "Do you remember when our goldfish, Bubbles, got very sick last year?" Kate began gently, running her fingers through Louis's hair. The children nodded solemnly. They had been devastated when their pet fish died, but it had also been their first real lesson about life and death. "Well," William continued, "sometimes people get very sick too, even when doctors try their best to help them get better." George's eyes widened with understanding. "Is someone we know sick, Papa?" William felt his throat tighten. "Yes, George, our Gangan is very, very sick." The children called Queen Elizabeth II Gangan, a nickname that had stuck since George was a toddler learning to speak. To them, she was not the powerful monarch that the world knew, but simply their loving great-grandmother, who always had time for their stories and games. Charlotte's face crumpled immediately. "Will the doctors make her better? Like they did when I had pneumonia?" Kate's heart broke at her daughter's innocent hope. "The doctors are doing everything they can, darling, but Gangan is 96 years old, and sometimes when people get very old and very sick, their bodies become too tired to keep fighting." Louis looked up at his mother with confused eyes. "Gangan sleeping, something like that, sweetheart," Kate whispered, kissing the top of his head. George, being the oldest, began to grasp the severity of the situation. "Is Gangan going to die?" he asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The directness of his question caught William off guard. He looked at Kate, seeking strength in her steady gaze, before turning back to his son. "We don't know for certain, George, but the doctors have asked all of the family to come visit her right away, just in case." Charlotte burst into tears, her small body shaking with sobs. "But I don't want Gangan to die. She promised to teach me how to ride horses like a proper princess." Kate gathered Charlotte into her arms, holding her close while her own tears began to fall. "I know, my love. I know it's scary and sad." George, trying to be brave like his father, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Will we go see her to say goodbye?" "Yes," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to fly to Scotland today to be with her, all of us together." "But what about school?" Charlotte asked through her tears. "And my ballet class?" "Those things can wait," Kate assured her. "Being with family is more important right now." Louis, still not fully understanding but sensing the sadness around him, began to cry too. "Want Gangan?" he wailed, reaching his arms out as if she might appear. William took his youngest son from Kate's arms, holding him close. "I know, buddy. We all want Gangan. That's why we're going to see her." For the next several minutes, the family sat together on the sofa, processing their emotions. Kate answered the children's questions as best she could, explaining what they might see when they arrived at Balmoral Castle. She told them that Gangan might look different, that she might be sleeping a lot, but that she would still know they were there. George asked if he could bring the picture he had drawn for the Queen the previous week. It was a colorful drawing of their family standing in front of Buckingham Palace, with Gangan wearing her crown and smiling. Kate assured him that would be a wonderful gift. Charlotte wanted to know if she could bring Gangan her favorite stuffed animal, a small corgi that looked just like the Queen's beloved dogs. Maybe it will make her feel better, she said, hopefully. William explained that while they couldn't cure Gangan's illness, their love and presence would mean everything to her. He told them stories about how much the Queen loved spending time with them, how her face would light up whenever they visited, and how proud she was of each of them. As they talked, Kate noticed William growing stronger. Speaking to their children about the Queen's love and legacy seemed to remind him of all the positive memories they shared. It was a coping mechanism she had seen him use before during difficult times. "Will you be the king now, Papa?" George asked suddenly. The question hung in the air for a moment. William looked at Kate, who nodded encouragingly. "Not right away," William explained. "Grandpa Charles will be king first, but someday, yes, I will be king, and then one day, George, you will be king too." George's eyes grew wide at this reminder of his future destiny. It was a reality they had always known but rarely discussed in such immediate terms. "But that's a long, long time from now," Kate added quickly, seeing the overwhelmed expression on her son's face. "For now, you're just our little boy, and that's all you need to worry about." The family spent another hour together in the playroom, sharing memories of the Queen and preparing emotionally for the difficult journey ahead. Kate helped the children pack small bags with their favorite comfort items while William made the necessary phone calls to cancel their commitments. As they prepared to leave for the airport, Charlotte took her mother's hand. "Mummy, will Gangan know that we love her?" Kate knelt down to Charlotte's level, looking directly into her daughter's eyes. "Yes, darling, she will absolutely know. Love is the strongest thing in the world, and it never goes away, even when people get sick." With their children as prepared as possible for what lay ahead, William and Kate gathered their family for the most important journey they would ever take together. The innocence of childhood was about to meet the harsh reality of loss, but they would face it as a united family. Drawing strength from each other and from the enduring love that the Queen had taught them was the foundation of everything good in life. The black car moved silently through the streets of London, carrying the Cambridge family toward an uncertain future. Kate sat in the back seat with Louis on her lap while George and Charlotte sat quietly on either side of her. William rode in the front passenger seat, staring out the window at the familiar city passing by. The usual London traffic seemed heavier today, each red light feeling like an eternity. Kate could feel the tension radiating from her husband as he checked his watch repeatedly. Every minute that passed was a minute they might not have with the Queen. "Are we almost at the airplane, Mummy?" Charlotte asked softly, breaking the heavy silence in the car. "Soon, sweetheart," Kate replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "It's not much further now." George pressed his face against the window, watching the people on the sidewalks going about their normal Thursday afternoon activities. "Do they know about Gangan?" he asked. Kate followed her son's gaze to the crowds of people shopping, walking their dogs, and chatting on their phones. "Not yet," she answered honestly, "but they will care very much when they find out. Gangan means a lot to everyone, not just our family." William turned to look back at his children, his heart aching at their confused and worried faces. He remembered being their age and trying to understand grown-up problems that seemed too big and scary to comprehend. "When I was about your age, George," William said, "Gangan taught me something very important. She said that even when sad things happen, we have to remember all the happy times too. Can you think of a happy time with Gangan?" George's face brightened slightly when she let me help feed her corgis last summer. She said I was the best dog helper she ever had, and she taught me how to wave like a real princess, Charlotte added, demonstrating the gentle wrist movement the Queen had shown her. Even little Louis contributed. "Gangan gives good hugs." Kate felt tears welling up in her eyes as she listened to her children's precious memories. These were the moments that would sustain them in the difficult days ahead. The car finally arrived at the Royal Air Force Base where their private jet was waiting. As they stepped out of the vehicle, Kate could see several other cars arriving. Prince Charles and Camilla were already there, along with Prince Andrew and Princess Anne. The entire royal family was converging on Scotland for what they all feared might be their final goodbye. The children clung closer to their parents as they walked toward the aircraft. The serious expressions on everyone's faces made the gravity of the situation clear, even to young minds. During the flight to Scotland, the family sat together in a cluster of seats. William held Kate's hand tightly while she kept the children close. The usual excitement of flying was absent today, replaced by a somber quiet that even Louis seemed to understand. Kate pulled out a small photo album from her handbag, one she had put together recently of the children's visits with their great-grandmother. They looked through the pictures together, remembering happier times. There was George as a baby, sleeping peacefully in the Queen's arms during his first Christmas. At Charlotte at age 3, having a tea party with the Queen and her favorite doll. Louis taking his first wobbly steps in the gardens at Balmoral while the Queen watched with delight. "Look how happy Gangan looks in this picture," Kate pointed out, showing them a photo from the previous summer where the Queen was laughing at something Charlotte had said. "She always laughed at my jokes," Charlotte said proudly, "even the ones that weren't very funny." William smiled despite his heavy heart. "That's because she loved you so much." When you love someone, even their silly jokes seem wonderful. As the plane flew north toward Scotland, William found himself lost in his own memories. He thought about all the summers he had spent at Balmoral as a child, learning to fish in the river, exploring the vast grounds, and sitting by the fireplace in the evenings while his grandmother told stories about the family's history. The Queen had been his anchor after his mother died. When the world felt chaotic and unpredictable, she represented stability and continuity. She had taught him about duty, honor, and service, but more importantly, she had shown him unconditional love during the most difficult period of his young life. "What are you thinking about?" Kate asked quietly, noticing William's distant expression. "Just remembering," he replied. "All those summers here as a boy, she taught me so much. About being royal, yes, but also about being human, about kindness and duty and putting others before yourself." Kate squeezed his hand. "She's so proud of the man you've become. She tells me all the time." "Does she really?" William asked, needing to hear this confirmation. "Every time we talk privately, she says you remind her of your grandfather, Prince Philip, when he was young. Strong but gentle, serious about duty but never forgetting to laugh." This comparison meant everything to William. Prince Philip had been his role model, the man who had shown him how to support a queen while maintaining his own identity and strength as they began their descent into Aberdeen. The Scottish landscape spread out below them. The rolling hills and ancient castles looked peaceful in the afternoon light, unchanged by the human drama unfolding in their midst. Kate helped the children gather their belongings as the plane prepared to land. Each child clutched something special they wanted to give or show to their great-grandmother. George had his drawing, Charlotte had her stuffed corgi, and Louis had a small toy airplane that he insisted Gangan would want to see. "Remember what we talked about," Kate said gently to the children. "Gangan might look tired, and she might not be able to talk very much, but she will know we're there, and she will be so happy to see you." The plane touched down smoothly, and within minutes, they were in another car heading toward Balmoral Castle. The familiar Scottish countryside rushed past the windows, but today it felt different. Today it felt like they were racing against time. William's phone buzzed with updates from other family members who had already arrived. His father texted that the Queen was still conscious but very weak. His brother Harry was on a plane from California. Everyone was coming to say goodbye. As they drove through the gates of Balmoral, Kate felt a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness for what they were about to lose, but gratitude for all the years they had been blessed to have the Queen in their lives. The castle came into view, its stone walls and towers standing majestically against the Scottish hills. It had been a place of joy and laughter for their family, a refuge from public life where they could simply be themselves. Today it would be the setting for the most difficult farewell any of them had ever experienced. "We're here," William said, quietly as the car pulled up to the main entrance. Kate looked at her husband and saw the little boy who had once lost his mother, now preparing to lose the grandmother who had helped heal that wound. But she also saw the strong man he had become, ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage and grace. Together, they walked toward the castle doors, their children's hands clasped tightly in theirs, ready to begin the goodbye they never wanted but could no longer avoid. The ancient stones of Balmoral Castle stood silently against the grey Scottish sky as the Cambridge family's car approached the main entrance. Kate could feel the weight of history in these walls. Generations of royal family members who had walked these halls, celebrated birthdays, shared Christmas mornings, and yes, said their final goodbyes. As they stepped out of the car, the cool Highland air hit their faces. It smelled of heather and pine, scents that would forever remind them of this day. The children stayed close to their parents, sensing the solemnity of the moment even if they couldn't fully understand its magnitude. Prince Charles emerged from the castle's main door, his face drawn with exhaustion and grief. Kate had never seen her father-in-law look so aged, as if the weight of what was happening had physically changed him. He walked toward them with arms outstretched. "William," Charles said, embracing his eldest son tightly. "I'm so glad you're here." Kate watched as her husband hugged his father, two men who would soon carry the heaviest burden the monarchy could offer. In this moment, they were simply a father and son facing the loss of someone they both loved deeply. "How is she?" William asked quietly. "Peaceful," Charles replied. "Weak, but still very much herself. She's been asking for you, for all of you." The children looked up at their grandfather expectantly. Charles knelt down to their level, his formal composure softening as he became simply Grandpa instead of the future king. "Hello, my darlings," he said, gathering them into a group hug. "Gangan is resting upstairs, but she's been waiting to see you." "Is she going to be okay, Grandpa?" Charlotte asked, her eyes wide with hope. Charles paused, choosing his words carefully. "She's very tired, sweetheart, but seeing you will make her very happy." Inside the castle, the atmosphere was hushed and reverent. Family members moved quietly through the halls, speaking in whispers. Kate recognized the signs of a family in vigil, everyone coming together to support each other through an impossible time. Princess Anne approached them in the main hallway, her usually stern expression softened by grief. She had always been particularly close to her mother, sharing the Queen's love of horses and no-nonsense approach to royal duty. The children looked tired from the journey and observed, her voice gentle, would they like some tea and biscuits in the morning room while you go up to see Mother first? Kate looked at William, understanding the wisdom in this suggestion. It would give them a chance to assess the situation and prepare the children for what they were about to see. That's a lovely idea, Kate agreed. Children, would you like to have a snack with Aunt Anne while Mummy and Papa visit Gang Ann first? George, being the most perceptive, seemed to understand that this was about protecting them. Will you come get us after, so we can see her too? Of course, William promised. We'll all see Gang Ann together. Anne led the children toward the morning room, chatting with them about their journey and pointing out various portraits and artifacts along the way. Her gentle distraction gave William and Kate a few precious minutes to compose themselves before the most difficult moment of their lives. They climbed the grand staircase together, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. Kate's heart pounded. As they approached the Queen's private chambers, she had been in these rooms many times over the years, for family gatherings and private conversations, but never under circumstances like these. Dr. Douglas Glass, the Queen's personal physician, met them in the hallway outside her bedroom. His expression was grave but kind. "Your Majesties," he said quietly. "Her Majesty is conscious but very weak. She's had moments of clarity throughout the day, and she's been asking for family members by name. I must warn you, she appears quite different from when you last saw her." William nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Kate took his hand, offering what comfort she could. They entered the bedroom together, and Kate immediately felt the profound stillness that filled the space. The Queen lay in her bed, looking impossibly small against the large pillows. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and her eyes were closed. The room was filled with flowers from the castle's gardens, their sweet fragrance mixing with the scent of lavender that had always been the Queen's favorite. Personal photographs covered every surface, pictures of Prince Philip, for children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It was a room that spoke of a life fully lived and deeply loved. William approached the bed slowly, his footsteps barely audible on the carpet. "Granny," he said softly. The Queen's eyes fluttered open, and despite her weakened state, they still held the spark of intelligence and warmth that had defined her throughout her long life. A small smile crossed her lips when she saw William. "My dear boy," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with love. William took her hand in his, surprised by how fragile it felt. These were the hands that had signed countless documents, waved to millions of people, and held for generations of her family. Now they felt as delicate as paper. "I'm here, Granny," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "Kate and the children are here too." The Queen's eyes moved to Kate, who had positioned herself on the other side of the bed. Kate leaned down and kissed the Queen's forehead gently. "Your Majesty," Kate said softly, reverting to the formal address that had become second nature over the years. "Catherine," the Queen replied, using Kate's full name as she always did. "My dear girl, thank you for taking such good care of my grandson." Kate felt tears streaming down her face. Even in her final hours, the Queen was thinking of others, expressing gratitude and love rather than focusing on her own suffering. "The children are downstairs," William told her. "They have things they want to show you, drawings and stories to share." The Queen's eyes brightened slightly. "I would like that very much. They bring such joy to these old halls." For the next few minutes, William and Kate sat with the Queen, sharing quiet conversation and simply being present. The Queen asked about their work, their plans for the children's education, and various family matters, even facing death. She that remained interested in the lives and welfare of those she loved. "William," the Queen said, her voice growing even softer, "you must promise me something." "Anything, Granny. Promise me you'll remember that duty and love are not opposites. The greatest service you can give to the crown is to love your family well. Your children, Catherine, your people, love them all with everything you have." William nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The Queen turned to Kate. "And you, my dear, must help him remember who he is beneath the titles. He is a good man, a loving father, and a devoted husband before he is anything else." Kate squeezed the Queen's hand gently. "I promise, Your Majesty." Always, as they prepared to bring the children upstairs, Kate marveled at the Queen's strength. Even in her weakest moment, she was still thinking about the future, still guiding and protecting her family. It was a final lesson in grace under pressure, a masterclass in putting others before yourself even when facing your own mortality. The bedroom door opened quietly as Charles entered to tell them the other family members had arrived. Soon this room would be filled with everyone who loved her, all coming together to surround their matriarch with warmth and affection in her final hours. But for now, in these quiet moments before the children came upstairs, William and Kate simply sat with the Queen, holding her hands and letting her know through their presence that she was loved beyond measure and that her legacy would live on in the family she had shaped with such wisdom and care. The afternoon light was beginning to fade outside the windows of Balmoral Castle as Kate and William prepared to bring their children upstairs to see their great-grandmother. The Queen had rested for a short while after their initial visit, but now she was awake and asking specifically for her great-grandchildren. Kate, single quotes, heart was heavy as she walked down the grand staircase to collect George, Charlotte, and Louis from the morning room. She had spent the last 20 minutes trying to find the right words to prepare them for what they were about to see. But how do you explain to children that someone they love is dying? She found them sitting quietly with Princess Anne, who had been showing them a book of photographs from previous family gatherings at Balmoral. The children looked up hopefully when Kate entered the room. "Is it time to see Gangan now?" George asked, standing up immediately. "Yes, sweetheart," Kate replied, kneeling down to their level. "But I need to remind you that Gangan is very tired and she might look different than usual. She's still the same person who loves you very much, but she's been sick and that has made her look more fragile." Charlotte clutched her stuffed corgi tighter. "Will she still recognize us?" "Oh yes," Kate assured her. "She's been asking for you by name. She wants to see George's drawing and hear about Charlotte's ballet lessons, and see Louis's new airplane." Louis toddled over to his mother, holding up his toy plane. "Show Gangan zoom zoom." "That's right, darling," Kate said, lifting him into her arms. "Gangan would love to see your airplane." Together the family made their way back upstairs. Kate noticed how the children instinctively moved closer to her and William as they approached the Queen's bedroom. Their usual exuberant energy was replaced by a careful solemnity that broke Kate's heart. William opened the bedroom door gently, and they entered as a family. The Queen was propped up against her pillows, looking more alert than she had earlier. Her face lit up with genuine joy when she saw her great-grandchildren. "My precious ones," she said, her voice still weak but filled with warmth. "Come closer so I can see you properly." George approached the bed first, still clutching his colorful drawing. "I made this for you, Gangan," he said, carefully placing the paper where she could see it. The drawing showed their family standing together in front of Buckingham Palace, with the Queen wearing her crown and surrounded by her beloved corgis. It was the innocent artwork of a child, but it captured something beautiful about their family bond. "It's absolutely magnificent," the Queen said, studying every detail. "Look at how you've drawn my dogs. And is that little Louis trying to pet one of them?" George nodded eagerly. "He loves the corgis almost as much as you do." Charlotte stepped forward next, offering her stuffed corgi. "This is for you to keep, Gangan, so you won't be lonely." The Queen accepted the small toy with trembling hands, holding it close to her chest. "This is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received, Charlotte. I shall treasure it always." Little Louis, not fully understanding the gravity of the situation but sensing the love in the room, climbed onto the bed with help from William. He showed the Queen his toy airplane, making whooshing sounds as he moved it through the air. "Zoom zoom, Gangan, airplane fly high." The Queen smiled, watching Louis play with a mixture of joy and sadness in her eyes. "Yes, darling, it flies. Very high indeed. Just like you will when you grow up." For the next hour, the family sat together in the Queen's bedroom, sharing stories and memories. The Queen listened intently as Charlotte described her ballet recital and George talked about his favorite subjects at school. She asked thoughtful questions about their friends, their hobbies, and their dreams for the future. "George," the Queen said softly, "one day you will be king, but right now, you are simply my great-grandson, and that makes me prouder than any crown ever could." George looked serious for a moment. "Will I be a good king like you are a good queen, Gangan?" "You will be better than good," she replied. "You will be extraordinary. Because you have something I had to learn. You know how to love openly and freely. Never lose that." As the evening progressed, other family members began gathering in the room. Prince Charles sat in a chair beside the bed, holding his mother's hand. Princess Anne stood near the window, her usual stoic demeanor softened by grief. Prince Andrew and Prince Edward arrived with their families, creating a circle of love around the Queen's bed. Kate watched as her children interacted naturally with their great-grandmother, unaware that these precious moments would soon become their most treasured memories. Louis had fallen asleep curled up next to the Queen, his small hand resting on her arm. Charlotte was showing her the proper way to hold a ballet position, even from bed. George was telling her about a book he was reading about British history. "You know," the Queen said to George, "your great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, also loved history. She kept detailed diaries about everything that happened during her reign. Perhaps you might consider doing the same one day." "I could start now," George said excitedly. "I could write about today, about being here with you." The Queen's eyes filled with tears. "That would make me very happy, my dear boy." As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the room, the Queen grew visibly more tired. Her breathing became shallower and she spoke less frequently, but her eyes remained alert, taking in every face, every conversation, every moment of love that surrounded her. Dr. Glass entered the room quietly and spoke with Prince Charles in hushed tones. Kate could see the concern in the doctor's expression, and she knew their time was running short. William seemed to sense it too. He gathered his children gently, explaining that Gangan needed to rest but that they had given her the most wonderful gift by visiting. "But we just got here," Charlotte protested softly. "I know, sweetheart," Kate said, "but we've had a beautiful time together, and Gangan will remember every moment." The queen raised her hand slightly, gesturing for the children to come closer. One last time. With great effort, she kissed each of them on the forehead. "Remember that I love you always," she whispered to each child. "Even when you can't see me, I will be watching over you," as Kate carried Louis and Lee, George and Charlotte from the room. She turned back to see William still beside his grandmother's bed. The queen was looking at him with such profound love and pride that Kate felt her heart break all over again. "Take care of them," the queen whispered to William, though Kate could barely hear the words, "and let them take care of you." "I promise, Granny," William replied, his voice cracking with emotion. Kate waited in the hallway with the children while William had his final private moments with the queen through the partially open door. She could hear him telling his grandmother about his hopes for their family, his fears about the future, and his gratitude for everything she had taught him. When William finally emerged from the room, his face was streaked with tears he no longer tried to hide. Kate had never seen her husband so vulnerable, so completely stripped of the protective walls he usually maintained. The children were exhausted from the emotional day and the long journey. Kate settled them in one of the guest bedrooms, reading them a story and tucking them in with extra care. They fell asleep quickly, their small bodies finally giving in to the weight of the day. Later that evening, as the adult family members maintained their vigil, Kate found herself thinking about the queen's extraordinary grace. Even in her final hours, she had focused entirely on others, comforting her family, sharing wisdom, and expressing love. It was a masterclass in dignity and selflessness that Kate knew she would carry with her forever. Around 9 p.m., Dr. Glass emerged from the Queen's room and spoke quietly with Prince Charles. The end was near. Family members were called to gather around the bed one final time. Kate stood behind William, her hands on his shoulders as they surrounded the Queen with their presence. The room was filled with quiet prayers, whispered words of love, and the steady rhythm of collective breathing. At 6:30 p.m., surrounded by the love of her family, Queen Elizabeth II took her final breath. The woman who had dedicated her entire life to service, duty, and love passed away peacefully, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations. In the profound silence that followed, Kate felt the weight of history settling around them. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that had defined not just their family but the entire nation. William's shoulders shook as he finally allowed himself to grieve fully, and Kate held him close, offering what comfort she could in the face of such overwhelming loss. The goodbye they never wanted was complete, but the love that had inspired it would continue forever. The hours following the Queen's death passed in a blur of official protocols and private grief. Kate had never experienced anything like the strange mixture of public duty and personal mourning that now consumed their lives. While part of her wanted to retreat into solitude with her family, another part understood that their loss was shared by millions of people around the world. In the immediate aftermath, Balmoral Castle became a center of intense activity. Officials arrived to handle the formal procedures required when a monarch dies. Phone calls were made to government leaders, Commonwealth nations, and other royal families around the world. The machinery of state began its careful choreography of succession and mourning. Through it all, William moved like a man in a dream. Kate watched her husband struggle to balance his roles as a grieving grandson, a future king, and a father trying to protect his children from the overwhelming nature of what was happening around them. The children slept through most of the initial chaos, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. Kate was grateful for this small mercy, knowing they would need all their strength for the difficult days ahead. Around midnight, Kate found William standing alone on the castle's terrace, looking out over the Scottish Highlands. The night air was crisp and clear, filled with the sounds of nature that the Queen had always loved about Balmoral. "She would have liked tonight," William said quietly as Kate joined him. "The stars are so bright here," she always said. They reminded her that there was something bigger than all of us, something eternal. Kate slipped her arm through his, offering silent comfort. "She was so proud of you, William." Even at the end, all she talked about was how well you've grown into your role, how much you love your family. "I don't know how to do this without her," William admitted, his voice breaking. "She was my guide through everything. When Mum died, when I got married, when the children were born, she was always there with the right words, the right advice." "You won't have to do it without her," Kate said gently. "Everything she taught you, all the wisdom she shared, all the love she gave you, that's still with you. It's part of who you are now." They stood together in comfortable silence, processing the magnitude of their loss. In the distance they could see lights from the village, where people were already beginning to gather, bringing flowers and notes of condolence. The Queen's death would be announced to the public in the morning, but somehow people always seemed to know when something momentous had happened. "The children," William said suddenly. "How do we help them through this?" "George is old enough to understand what's happened, but Charlotte and Louis Kurtz had been thinking about this throughout the evening. We tell them the truth age appropriately. We let them grieve in their own way, and we make sure they remember all the love, not just the loss." She gave Charlotte her favorite brooch last Christmas. William remembered, said she wanted her to have something special to remember her by. It's like she knew. Kate felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. The Queen had always been thoughtful about creating lasting memories with her great-grandchildren, but now those gestures took on new meaning. Over the next few days, Kate watched her family navigate their grief in different ways. George threw himself into reading everything he could about royal history and protocol, as if understanding the formal aspects of what was happening could help him process the emotional reality. Charlotte asked endless questions about death, heaven, and whether the Queen could still see them from wherever she had gone. Louis, at 4 years old, kept asking when Gangan would wake up from her long sleep. Kate found herself becoming the emotional anchor for not just her own children but for William as well. The formal requirements of royal mourning meant that William had to participate in countless meetings, ceremonial preparations, and official duties, even while processing his personal grief. "I don't know how she did it," William said one evening as they prepared for bed in their guest room at Balmoral. "When Grandpa Philip died, she had to carry on with all the official duties while dealing with her own heartbreak. Now I understand how impossible that must have been." Kate helped him with his cufflinks, a small domestic gesture that provided comfort in its normalcy. She did it because she loved her people and understood her duty, but she also had family to support her, just like you do. The public announcement of the Queen's death brought an outpouring of grief from around the world that took Kate's breath away. Flowers piled up outside Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and Balmoral. People traveled from across the globe to pay their respects. The queue to view the Queen's coffin would eventually stretch for miles along the Thames. Kate realized that their private grief was now shared by millions of people who had also loved the Queen in their own way. It was both comforting and overwhelming to see how deeply her death affected people from all walks of life. "Look at this," George said one morning, showing his parents a letter from a child in Australia. "She says Gangan was her favorite queen, and that she's sorry we're sad." Hundreds of similar letters arrived daily, from children and adults around the world sharing their memories of the Queen and offering comfort to the royal family. Kate was moved by the genuine love and concern expressed by complete strangers. The funeral preparations became a family effort. The children helped choose flowers from the gardens at Balmoral, selecting the varieties they knew their great-grandmother had loved best. They wrote short notes to include with the flowers, private messages that would travel with her on her final journey. "I want to tell her about my loose tooth," Charlotte said as she carefully wrote her note. "She always asked about my teeth when they were wiggly." These simple, childlike concerns mixed with the elaborate state funeral preparations, we created a surreal atmosphere. Kate found herself planning one of the most significant ceremonial events in British history while also helping her 4-year-old understand why his great-grandmother couldn't come to his birthday party next month. Throughout this period, Kate watched William slowly transform from a devastated grandson into a man ready to carry forward his grandmother's legacy. The grief would always be there, but it was joined by determination, purpose, and a deep understanding of the responsibility he now carried. "She prepared me for this my whole life," William told Kate one evening as they walked through the gardens at Balmoral. "Every conversation, every lesson, every moment we spent together, she was teaching me how to be worthy of what she built." Kate saw the truth of this in everything William did. His gentle way with their children, his instinctive understanding of public duty, his ability to find strength in service to others. These were all gifts from his grandmother, lessons learned through years of love and guidance. On their last night at Balmoral before returning to London for the funeral preparations, Kate tucked the children into bed and found herself thinking about the Queen's final words to her: "Help him remember who he is beneath the titles." Looking at her family, William reading George a bedtime story, Charlotte brushing her doll's hair, Louis playing quietly with his toy cars, Kate realized that this was exactly what the Queen had meant. Beneath all the ceremony and protocol, they were simply a family who loved each other deeply. The goodbye they never wanted had tested them in ways Kate never could have imagined, but it had also revealed reserves of strength, love, and resilience that would serve them well in the years ahead. The Queen's greatest legacy wasn't the crown or the ceremony. It was the family she had shaped with such wisdom and care. A family that would carry her love forward into the future. As Kate turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, she whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who had welcomed her into this extraordinary family and taught her that love, duty, and service could all be expressions of the same magnificent commitment to something greater than oneself.